right. So are humans essentially like animals? And what I'm gonna ask the question, when I ask this question, I'm not meaning exactly like animals, because obviously humans have a higher consciousness. We have higher capabilities. We're definitely the apex predator in this realm on this earth. But are we as different as we might think from animals? And I would argue no. And the reason why is because I've been listening to more podcasts and things like that talking about DNA and how, and from other various sources and things like that on YouTube, which maybe that's not the most, accurate thing to be basing your truth off of. But it, to me, it makes sense. So your DNA basically makes up all of your looks, and it also is attributed to your personality. So if our DNA basically controls how we look and the way we act, whether or not we're the type of person who tends to be more confrontational or not, then I would argue that most of the way we think and act with our environment would be very instinctual, and it would be not as free flowing as we might think it is, because I know a lot of people think that humans have free will, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that entirely, but a lot of times people don't really even understand why they do something a lot of times. And to me, this seems pretty stupid, but it actually kind of makes sense if you think about it from an instinctual point of view, that a lot of people actually do go off of their instincts and impulses, which is human nature in general, to go off of your impulses. So it generally, I would say it generally makes sense from that point of view, because it's a very human response to pretty much do whatever you want whenever you want, and not restrain yourself or restrict yourself from certain types of activities or things that you want to do. And actually restricting yourself is an inhumane and unnatural state of being for a human. So location also determines a lot of things, and back to what we're talking about with genes, and I guess if you want to talk about location and geography as well too, if I want to talk about that, your skin color would depend on, like, so people who are further away from the equator tend to have less of a darker complexion, whereas people who are more closer to the equator tend to have a darker complexion, which makes sense for from a natural perspective, because people who are closer to the equator, they get exposed to more sunlight, which they actually need if you have a darker complexion. But it ends up working out in their favor, because since they're out in the sun so much, they won't get as much skin damage and things of that nature. So yeah, it just kind of reminds me of when I was talking about religion too, and my previous videos about people who would be basically predestined to go to hell because of their geographical location. Your genes also, I guess, would play into somewhat of a predestination of how obviously you would look, and maybe how you would act personality-wise, because a lot of your personality comes from your parents and things like that too. Obviously, personality is more shaped by environment than your looks would be. It would be more for sure, depending on what family you have, more so. But a lot of these things are already pre-built into our DNA, and our DNA is what controls it controls or it sets the baseline for who we are as an individual. The thing is too is, like, when people think about being in control and having self-control, and they're able to make all the decisions in their life, I would argue that this also isn't really true because of the society that you live in shapes your decisions, your general intuitions and instincts as a natural being are also shaped as well too because we tend to have certain urges and things like that. And then for men, maybe more than for women, and depending on how you were raised and things of that nature, will shape also what things tend to be more of your vices. Um, if you want to talk about illegal substance abuse as well too, that could be something that certain people tend to lean towards more. But I think from a natural, like, genetic point of view, that's actually not true because people end up looking for something, they're searching for something to make them feel better about their life. And the reason why they're doing that is because they're in a depressed state and their biochemistry is off, essentially. So that's more of a diet issue than a vice issue. But really, all of these things that we talk about that are vices for humans are actually vices because they're just natural um, responses that people have, and they're like natural feelings and wants and desires, essentially. So, a lot of the reason why we resist certain things and our instincts um, is because of our society and brainwashing. And it's not because you actually wouldn't do those things instinctually or naturally, but it's because society doesn't allow you to. For example, in law enforcement, if you do something bad, obviously there's consequences. So I'm not saying that people who live naturally or in nature would do whatever they want to all the time, because there still would be natural consequences from other tribes and things like that, or your own family or own people with some kind of persecution. So, but all of those things are quite certainly man-made. So if you were truly someone who was in nature and only in nature, then you would resist those things. So, um, or you would not resist those things. You would resist more constraint and like restriction on what you do in your life. Um, so I think the reason why too, a lot of people, like, I've been thinking about this more recently, wanting to get out in nature, and I honestly really just like watching the birds and the squirrels out here at the park. Even like it's pretty interesting, just kind of, I don't know, it's like stress relief too. And I think the reason why is because a lot of stress comes from the city and all the busyness and all the hustle and bustle. Because in nature is calm and serenity, and the city is not, because there's always something going on. There's always someone who thinks that they need to work harder than someone else and um, do more, essentially. But really, all people want to do is rest, because that's the natural state of, I mean, nature. You can even, I mean, just think about it when you think about calm and serenity and peacefulness when you go out into nature and the birds are just chirping and things like that. It's not really, I mean, obviously the animals have to be afraid because they might get eaten by another animal, but um, yeah, it's quite peaceful. So I know we got a little bit off topic of whether or not humans are animals, but I think we can also all agree that obviously humans have animal cells, so that would be a pretty significant argument for why humans are still essentially animals. We're just a lot more mentally capable. Wow, that chipmunk is still sitting at the base of that tree in that same spot that I took a picture of it like 30 minutes ago. It's kind of funny. Um, but yeah, so our whole body's made of animal cells. We're warm-blooded like other animals. Um, but I do know that a lot of people like to make the distinction between humans and animals. But the thing is, like, when I talked about the differences between man and woman too, because a lot of people like to make a lot of or like to expose and put focus on a lot of the differences. But when you look at it the same with like humans versus animals and man versus woman. There's actually way more similarities between us than there are differences. Of course, there are significant differences depending on what animal you're talking about, but um, there's quite a lot of similarities when you actually break it down. And you're talking about every little intricate detail of our being versus like the existence of animals. And humans want to, like I said in the previous video, they want to survive and they want to thrive and they want to reproduce and be healthy like all other living things. So if animals are also like that, then really what really is different between humans and animals? Um, I mean, we do things on impulse and out of instinct. We want to survive. We want to have a family. We want to be happy. We want to be healthy. Um, we want to have fun, right? I mean, and that's basically what life and existence and nature is all about. The animals having a family, hang out with their family and their kin, and having a good time and relaxing and all these other good things. So, to be honest, I don't really see much different other than the cognitive ability or capabilities. But I mean, elephants and dolphins have high cognitive capabilities, but we still call them animals. Like they have way more cognitive ability than a squirrel, but they're still called animals. So I don't really see too much of difference there personally. So, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Oh, squirrel's running down the tree. Oh, must be okay with me because I've been walking around here. So, anyways, hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.